Hello there, I'm Sidarta Ribeiro. I'm a Brazilian neuroscientist and I'm the writer of this book, The Oracle of Night, The History and Science of Dreams. I was inspired to write this book when I was transiting between my PhD studies and my postdoc. And I had about 6 months of an interval in which I traveled and thought a lot about what I had learned and what I wanted to do with my life. And I had this feeling that if I could only gather all the necessary information within neuroscience, within biology at large, and in fact across disciplines, going towards psychology and history and anthropology and mythology, perhaps I could tell the history of the human mind, could talk about the development and the evolution of human culture from the point of view of sleep and dreams. And this is what the book is about. It took me 19 years to gather the evidence that I considered relevant for the task, and I hope you enjoyed reading the book.
What kind of research did you do to write this book?
This book contains a lot of the research that I do in my own lab. This has to do with mechanisms of memory consolidation during sleep, research done in animal models, but also research done in humans, the investigation of the role of dream reports to diagnose schizophrenia, something I cover in my book. Also the importance of naps to improve school learning. These are things that I continue to do with my research team. But for the book I researched beyond my own activity, of course. So I went through many different studies in neuroscience, in psychology, and of course I had to study a lot in history and mythology and anthropology to be able to bridge the scientific knowledge with the knowledge that comes from traditional forms of wisdom.
Why do we dream?
We dream because we evolved to dream. Dreaming is quite adaptive, is a way by which our brains process information and allow us to survive in the world and to simulate future possibilities of the world. So our ancestors, not just our human ancestors, but our mammalian ancestors, became really good at dreaming, and it gave them a cognitive edge. And this probably is part of the reason why mammals radiated throughout the world and occupied all possible ecological niches. But in the human lineage, something quite important happened, which is the possibility of sharing dreams. When you share a dream, you really share your desires, you share your fears, and you create the possibility for collective action. And this was tremendously important in our evolution.
What is one way that dreams have played a role in human history?
Dreams were tremendously important in human history, and this is very well documented throughout all the literature of the ancient world, of the Middle Ages. There are many examples of this importance. We can talk about the dreams that marked the life of Julius Caesar, including at the very end the premonitory dreams that he and his wife Calpurnia had the night before his killing, and he didn't pay attention to the warning of the dreams that they both had, and went on and got assassinated. There are many examples in science. For example, the discovery of the periodic table by Mendeleev is attributed to a dream. There are several examples in the business world. For example, Elias Howe invented the sewing machine after having a very imagetic dream that showed how to do it. And we can also talk about the creativity that is prompted by dreaming that, for example, allowed Salvador Dali to paint amazing paintings that are quite admired today and that were explicitly produced upon dream visions.
What's one of the most surprising things you've learned about dreaming?
Well, you know, one thing that really struck me as important and mysterious was the feeling that I had a few times in my life that I was inside a very well-formed dream, and suddenly I would transit into another dream, a dream with a different scenario, different characters, and a different mission or quest to be fulfilled by myself as a dreamer. And really gave me the feeling that perhaps we do not have only 4 or 5 dreams per night, sort of corresponding to the 4 or 5 episodes of REM sleep that we have every night, the state of sleep in which we dream the most. But perhaps we have thousands, hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of dreams every night, but they all go unwitnessed by the representation of the dreamer. So maybe we only witness 4 or 5 dreams, but we're having many other dreams that are inhabited by the other creatures of the mind, which are not ourselves.
What have you been reading during the pandemic to stay hopeful?
The pandemic is a tremendous crisis, and I believe that to stay hopeful, we first need to have a good assessment of the situation. So I've been reading with my family and reading aloud with my spouse and children The Falling Sky by Davi Kopenawa and Bruce Albert, an indigenous leader, an indigenous shaman, and an anthropologist that joined forces for over 20 years. They collaborated to produce this very, very rich account of the cosmovision, of the beliefs, the society that the Yanomami Amazonian people have, and how this has been disrupted by the invasion of white miners, of different forces, economic forces that try to take away their land. And it's basically a story of the destruction of nature and society. And it gives us inspiration and also a deeper understanding of what's at stake currently in the Amazon, which is being burned and destroyed and is approaching the point of no return. With regard to social inequality, we finished reading also aloud in family The Child of the Dark, The Diary of Carolina Maria de Jesus. Carolina Maria de Jesus was an Afro-Brazilian writer that in the 1950s, in the late 1950s, in the city of São Paulo, wrote from the unique perspective of a black woman, mother of 3 children, that really lived from hand to mouth and had to scavenge for scraps of metal and paper to feed the family, and basically they had to deal with hunger on an everyday basis. But she had this tremendous talent. She had only 2 years of formal schooling, but she had this tremendous talent for writing and wrote this amazing account of poverty, which is sadly still quite true and quite real today. There are more than 800 million people in starvation in the world. So I believe that if we are to have hope in the future, and if we are to build a better future, we need to really understand and have empathy for those that suffer the most and understand what's at stake at the beginning of the 21st century.
Can you read us a short passage from your book?
Absolutely, it would be a pleasure. Let's see. Chapter 15, The Probabilistic Oracle. Ever since our ancestors began to make a written record of their thoughts around 4,500 years ago, there has been ample documentation of dream narratives about what is yet to happen, as well as how to go about intervening in the future through behaviors represented in the dream. When a dream reverberates memories from the past, it is reflecting the dreamer's expectations for the future. Most of all, it is reflecting their chances of success or failure in the small or large private epics triggered by desire. These expectations do not only incorporate what the dreamer is contemplating consciously, but also, and in fact principally, their unconscious perception of the whole context in which they find themselves, with its meanderings, promises, and chasms. It is the broad, diffuse sum total of impressions collected both above and below the threshold of consciousness, which forms the basis for intuition and which gives dreams their life. I want to thank the Boulder Bookstore for the opportunity to meet with you. I really hope you read this book, and I hope you dream about it. Thank you.